the two-time defending World Pit Crew champions. They get me out front each race. They've kept me out front all year. In the race for the championship, it's the little things that mean everything.
The little things mean everything. The little things.
Oh, welcome to Flashback to the Track, the podcast that takes you back to the track from the minds of two guys who probably weren't at the track that day. With your hosts, Mark and James. I'm James, and Mark's on the other end. What's up, Mark?
What's going on? We are going to talk
We're just
about
doing this backwards now. It's weird.
pit crews, man. We're going to talk about pit crews today.
Yeah, it's a different change of pace for us. We're not going to review a race. I mean, kind of like last week. We didn't review a race then. But we're going to review a competition. And not just any competition, a championship competition. This was the 2003 Unocal 76 World Pit Crew Championships from Rockingham, North Carolina. That's right, the Rock. This was quite an event because this, in my mind, was the ultimate stage for every single NASCAR Winston Cup pit crew back in the day. This is where you got to showcase that you had the best pit crew in all of NASCAR Winston Cup racing.
Yeah, and it really shows everybody how important pit crews are to the sport. You know, we definitely see them like on race day, hitting the cars and, doing their thing. But it's really now you get to see actually how fast they are and get to kind of examine the role that each crew member plays. Like, you can really learn, what does a catch can man do? What is a fueler actually doing? Those type of things. So the pit crew competition is really cool. And this is kind of the last year of its current iteration as the Pit Crew Championship before it kind of moved to as part of the All-Star race festivities. Mm-hmm. So it's a really cool competition to watch. I like how they did it. It's a really cool format that we'll get into how they did it. Very simple, but very easy to follow. And just honestly, I hate using the term content, but it's just a cool piece of content, to show people.
And that's the thing. It was content because, if you were like myself and you watched this back in 2003, you remember watching this piece of content not during the NASCAR Winston Cup season. It was actually during the off-season. NBC was able to air this piece of content. And it was pretty cool piece because there's a lot of other content from throughout the season that's sprinkled into the broadcast. And, of course, you have a really great booth, which we're going to get into right now. Up in the booth for this one, man, we had Benny Parsons, Alan Beswick, and Wally Dallenbach. The true
all-star lineup.
Yeah,
all-star lineup.
If that's the standard for any NASCAR broadcast. It doesn't matter when or where. You got to live up to those three. And on pit road, who we have on pit road, Mark?
Matt Yoakum and Mr. Dave Burns. So Matt Yoakum, as we all know, the man who knows no network. He bounces from network to network, freelancing it like a champ. Mm-hmm. And then the man, Mr. Dave Burns. Always have a special place in my heart because I made him laugh at Mid-Ohio that one time. So, Dave, you're my guy.
Keep sharing our stuff on Twitter, Dave, because we love you. And we love to post about you, man, because we love it when you discover stuff. So, now that we kind of delved into the broadcast, let's kind of dive into a little bit of the history of this event. So, this event actually began back in 1967. It was held during the fall race weekend at North Carolina Speedway in Rockingham. And it was always, like we said, the way for all of the crews to show that they had the best pit crews in the garage area. And the thing about pit crews is, it's not like how it is nowadays where everyone's specialized and all pit crews do is pit the car. Back then, pit crews had roles on the team, or they had jobs at the shop, or even had other jobs that weren't necessarily within racing, but they still got together to pit the car or just work on the car during the weekend. The original champions of this event was Leonard Wood's Wood Brothers, who changed 2 tires in a whopping 21.992 seconds.
And wow. You would have had to crank the shutter, to even get a shot of those guys moving so fast.
Jeez,
21, the motion blur on that must have been crazy. So yeah, that's ridiculously slow. But it was the 60s, and man, there was a meme that went around. Well, it's a video It went around a few months ago, and just showing how slow an F1 pit stop was in the early '80s.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally looked like the guy had time to get out and like go inside and get some chips and get back in the car. Like that's how slow it was. So yeah, that's really slow, but for the time that was remarkably fast. So that's kind of the thing you have to realize with that incredibly slow time. And also like tire wear and tire deg was different in the '60s. I don't think they changed as many tires back then as they do now.
No, they definitely didn't. And also the we got to think about how big tires were and wheels were back in the day. They were probably really the wheels themselves were heavier. The tires were a different kind of compound and different construction. So it was big. And then also, think about the Jackman, Mark. How many times do you think that Jackman had to pump that car to get it up high enough in the air? And also how slow those pit guns were, man. Jeez, like technology had not evolved the pit crews to be what they were even in 2003. And this is, the Wood brothers are a pioneer of pit stops throughout motorsports. I mean, hell, they even pitted an IndyCar during the Indy 500. Do you remember which driver that was, Mark? I think it was like Rick Mears, if I'm not mistaken.
I This is the first time hearing of it. So
You
thank
never
you
knew
for that
that?
tidbit. I did not know that.
See, we're like Joe Rogan, where we'll just Google things during the podcast.
We need a guy. We need a Jamie. We need
We,
someone to
we,
be like, Jamie, can you pull it up for me?
yeah,
Yeah,
can
we
you pull it up?
need that.
And we just keep, BS talking, and then they're like, oh yeah, this happened, guys. I'm like, yeah, cool. And if we have to recommend any specific episode about racing from that, we do not recommend listening to the Danica Patrick one. It was solid, but it's not as great as him talking to Dale Earnhardt Jr., especially when Jr.'s trying to backpedal out of CBD.
Yeah, when he's like, I'll send you some. And Junior's like,
I don't want to get drug tested for it. Yeah, 1965. It was a Ford-powered Lotus that they actually pitted, and it was for Sir Jackie Stewart, not Rick Mears. I'm such an idiot.
wow, Sir
Yeah.
Jackie.
Sir Jackie back in the day. So they pitted Jackie Stewart's IndyCar in 1965.
Oh, that's actually a really cool fact. I did not know that. I didn't even know till recently that Bobby Allison raced at Indy once.
Yeah, he did. I think
was
Cale
reading that
Yarborough almost
recently.
raced at Indy too.
Yeah, and apparently, like all the crew guys, like and the IndyCar people, treated him like garbage because he was like this NASCAR guy, and all the engineers like wouldn't talk to him, and like they thought he was invading their sport. And folks, that still happens today. So
Unless
moving
you're
on.
Kurt Busch.
In the past winners of the competition are, Roush, Joe Gibbs, Hendrick, we already mentioned, the Wood brothers, and Petty Enterprises are kind of the recent ones, like leading up to this. And Richard Childress and the Wood brothers have each won the championship a record 4 times. Dale Earnhardt's crew, I think, won 4 times in the '80s. So
The Junkyard
that's
Dog.
when I think Kirk Shelmerdine was his crew chief, if
Before he was driving ARCA.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And yeah, so like we said, 2003 is the final year of the Pit Crew Challenge, Pit Crew Competition, or Championship, as we know it under the Unocal 76 name. And it was the last time they'd do it at Rockingham. Like we said, it would move to the All-Star weekend in May, the week before the Coke 600.
And the reason why all of these changes happened were, one, the biggest one, Unocal was leaving NASCAR. They were not going to be the official fuel of NASCAR. Therefore, they were taking all of their sponsorship and promotional pieces towards NASCAR away to be replaced by Sunoco, which was one big aspect. And another aspect was this lawsuit that an employee of Texas Motor Speedway filed against NASCAR for not giving Texas 2 race dates, which would inevitably end up leading towards Texas Motor Speedway and SMI, specifically SMI, buying out Rockingham, taking away the dates from Rockingham, giving Texas a second Cup date in November. So, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why this event doesn't exist the way it does, but then again, like Mark said, it evolved to what we knew was the All-Star Pit Crew Challenge in Charlotte during the All-Star weekend. And Mark, you remember those a few times. What did you think of those versus the Unocal 76 Pit Crew
Well,
Championship?
before we get to that, let's just quietly pour one out for Rockingham.
Oh,
I don't think there's a
rocking.
fan that doesn't miss Rockingham on the schedule. It was an amazing racetrack. And had they kept it, I would bank that Jamie McMurray would probably have 5 more career wins had they
Oh yeah.
kept Rockingham because he owned that place in the Busch Series. Had he had more opportunities in Cup there, he probably would have won there.
Hmm.
So kind of unfortunate that it's not on the schedule anymore, and it's kind of like, has it been demoed yet, or is it still
I think
sitting
it's
there?
still structurally up. It hasn't been knocked down, but I know it was for sale a little bit ago. I don't know if it was bought or what, but
Yeah.
still standing.
But speaking
They
of
need to stand that place.
those newer pit crew challenges, like they were awesome. The
Mm.
ones throughout the 2000s where they started adding an element where they pitted a standing car, then they ran, jumped over a barrier, and then pushed their own like a different car a length and had to beat the other team head to head, and it was kind of like a bracket system. Like those were really cool that you got to see the guys push the car, like do more than just change the tires and jack the car up. Like it was kind of like a really cool thing to watch. And then the best was when Red Bull came into the sport and they would just whoop everyone every year. Like they were
Mhm.
so good and they were such a fun team to watch.
One of the greatest teams in NASCAR history, in my opinion, Red Bull Racing. And I think something that you kind of touched on too, describing that competition is first is the Unocal 76 championship. The All Star Pit Crew Challenge was more focused on the individual efforts of each crew member than combining into being a team to push the car across the line. Where the Unocal Championship is just, you only have one shot to do it. You got to make it happen, and it's like the team effort of everyone has to do their part, but as a team, make sure the car gets off of pit road with no mistakes, no penalties occurred, and also the driver has a little bit of an influence too because they got to get it in the box to like basically complete the stop and get it out of the box as well too.
Yeah, it was cool to like involve the drivers. I thought that was pretty cool to have them in there, have them have to drive the car into the box and drive it out and have that be part of the timing because they're essentially a piece of the pit crew as they do have to operate that car, not stall it. There's a lot of pressure that goes onto a driver when they come into the pits, and that's always something young drivers have to practice a lot. Is just
Mm-hmm.
getting in and out of the pits. It's a thing that they really have to practice. They go to the pit crew practices, drive the car in so they can kind of get familiar with it. So that was cool to see. And we'll kind of break down for you the way the competition worked. So the top 25 in points, each car in the top 25 competed in this championship. And they have to empty 2 full cans of gas, which is 7 gallons each. So a total of 14 gallons have to get poured into the car. They have to change both left and right side tires in as short a time as possible, and the driver has to drive the car 15 feet out of the box for the clock to stop. They also have to drive it in, and I believe the clock starts when it kind of starts when like a guy puts his arm down, but it's basically when the car comes to a stop.
Yeah, it was
The
like
clock's supposed to start.
I believe right when they crossed over one pit box and they were like basically in the close to the pit box, they started the clock. Because like if you watch the video of this event, you see like this random crew member standing, not a crew member actually, it's a NASCAR official standing in the middle of pit road, arm up, then arm down. That I guess that was just their method of starting the clock, which I don't know why they didn't put like some kind of timing beam to do that. But who am I to think of what NASCAR should do? Um, and of course, as Mark said, the fastest team to complete the stop would win the championship or would be known as champions. There were penalties for infractions. Biggest infraction that is always known with a pit stop is leaving loose lug nuts. So, yeah, if your team had a loose lug nut, I believe it was a 3-second penalty per lug nut. If your fueler spilt fuel or had excess fuel that came from out of the can and spilt onto the pit box, that was a penalty as well. And of course, as Mark said, stalling the car is its own penalty in itself, and for the drivers slipping through the pit box, it's a penalty as well because you're just costing yourself time, and time penalties add up in this event.
Because the team with the fastest time becomes the new world champion. There can only be one.
World champion.
I feel like 3 seconds for a loose lug nut is pretty hefty.
That's
Like
devastating.
that's a devastating. Like that's like one loose lug nut, you're done. But I get it.
Yep.
You're trying to like separate, the top pit crews out of here. It's like that's what makes it worth doing. Is having they all have to be solid. They all have to be on there. And I think any pit crew guy would agree. They'd be like, yeah, I think it'd be cheating if you just like half torque them. That wouldn't really be. You would never do that in a race because the wheel could fall off. So I get why the penalty. I thought maybe like 1 second though, because that's
Yeah.
still hefty, like a whole second in a competition that's going to be this close. 3 seconds, just like you get a loose lug nut, it's over. You're done. There's no way you're winning.
And actually, I'll correct myself there. I believe it was a 2-second penalty per lug nut.
No, it was
but even
three. It was 3
it
seconds.
was 3. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, because yep, that makes sense then. Yeah, and that's just a shame because back then and even kind of today, you see it, especially when there was like the whole we don't care if there's loose lug nuts or missing lug nut rule that happened a few years ago. Like you're only shooting yourself in the foot in the race if like there is a loose wheel or you have a lug nut that's not on there. I mean, some drivers could drive through it and sometimes it just doesn't become a problem, but there are times when it just kills your race. So for it to kill your competition, I think it was pretty on par for what NASCAR could do to basically like level the playing field for this event. I don't think it was NASCAR more or less. It's just the objectives of this event.
Yeah, and to comment on when they went to like an open lug nut policy a few years ago, like I knew when they announced that, I'm like, that's not gonna last. Like
Yeah.
I knew I was like that maybe one season because you had them literally guys just torquing three nuts on there and they're like, it's fine. I'm like, yeah, until someone has a wheel fly off and it kills someone in the stands,
Yeah.
who are we suing? Who's paying for that, right?
Yeah.
So it just didn't really make any sense.
Well, I mean, you're going to have another situation like we did in what was that, the 2008 or 2009 Coke 600 when Vickers' wheel flew off of his car. I think it was 2008. And it landed right on top of that camper. Red Bull was in pretty deep trouble with NASCAR there because, you have a loose wheel, bring it in. Instead, they kind of stayed out on it. And that's the thing. A lot of teams are just going to tell their driver to feel it out and stay out. And when you do, that's when you have the problem. So it's kind of a shame and it is what it is. As we go on, like we said, this is an NBC broadcast. We told you who the booth is. We told you when it was aired. It was aired during the off season. But this event happened during what was the second to last race of the 2003 season. So everyone who's competing really didn't have a lot of time to, prepare or train for this event. And Mark, I think you can attest to the attitude of many of the crew chiefs and crew members for this event.
Yeah, so if you watch this, you'll notice that the crew chiefs really aren't that interested. A lot of them aren't. Like Robbie Reiser, they had won the previous 2 years in a row, and I think Matt Yoakum talks to him and says, "Oh, Robbie, like, what are you working on?" He's like, "Yeah, we didn't practice any more than we normally do. Like, we're more focused on winning the race tomorrow." He's like, "Yeah, it's good for the crew guys, but we just want to win the race tomorrow, so it's cool, but we don't really care." Like, basically, is what he says. And we forgot to mention, sorry, the winning crew gets $40,000 split between them.
Big
so that's
money.
what, like $5,000 a guy?
Yeah, that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good.
It's a hefty
chunk of
sum of
change.
money, man,
Yeah.
for one pit stop. So
Yeah, for less than 20 seconds worth of work.
yeah, so sign me up. But yeah, a lot of the guys aren't really like. It's cool that like they say like, yeah, it's great for the guys to get some recognition and it's a fun event for the crews. But I think they just are weirded out by the fact that it's like at the penultimate race weekend. It's like it'd be better if it was during the All-Star, which is where they moved it to. It was Thursday of All-Star week, which is a non-points paying, just have fun week. So I think it was a lot easier for the crews to have a good time.
And it was because Matt Kenseth at this point in the 2003 season is going for the championship. This is a race he could clinch the championship. His crew is focused on making sure that they will do that. They don't want to have to go to Homestead and then clinch it, when they could have clinched it at Rockingham. Instead, they have to stress for another week. So obviously their minds aren't there, even though they are the two-time and defending champions of this event coming into it. And then, a lot of teams just, like you said, they didn't get the reps. They didn't get the time to really train for this. So they're not going in cold, but they're not going in as sharp as they could for what is one of the biggest competitions for pit crews in all of NASCAR.
Yeah, and the thing you're really going to notice when you first watch this is how slow the stops are.
Oh yeah,
And the stops are slow because the guys are taking their time to make sure everything is done perfectly, right? And Benny mentions that. He's like, these are slower than in-race pit stops because of that, because they want to make sure all the lugs are tight. Normally, if you have one that's kind of loose, you're going to be okay because the other four are tight, but they want to make sure everything's done perfectly and do it all right so they can, not get any penalties. Because as we've mentioned, a penalty will absolutely shatter you. It's over if you have a loose lug nut. So there's no way you can really game the system and just, cheat, like go do a shoddy job, get a bunch of penalties and still win. It's not like that.
It's safe to say if you incur one penalty, incur one of them, you're done. You're not going to win this. You're not going to win the championship. You have to have a flawless pit stop. And these crew members probably don't have as much time to make sure everything's set up as properly as it should. All their guns are running as smoothly as they can with the air provided, and so on and so forth. Because they have to quickly get in and out. They're always it's like one pit stop, another pit stop, another pit stop. It's a pretty fluent event. It flows very quickly.
Yeah, and we didn't really do a rundown like we do for a race of all the different stops. We're just going to kind of mention some of the things we remember from watching it. And I think my favorite part of the entire event is Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s crew. He comes in. They absolutely blow the stop. It's so slow. I can't remember if they dropped some lugs. I think it's like a 21-second stop. And then they get 24 seconds of penalty added because they had 8 loose lug nuts. 8. So they were definitely into the Budweiser before that stop. Because
they did it for the car number, man. They were like, man, if we're gonna F up this bad, we're gonna do it so we're on par with our car number.
8
so yes,
times. Like that's ridiculously bad. Like that's a full we do not care about this at all. Like whatever.
Yeah,
we didn't practice, whatever.
It's kind of a shame too, because to me, 2003, 2004 are the years that we saw the most success out of Dale Earnhardt Jr. So you would think he probably had the best pit crew through these years, but they kind of showcased that they were slacking during this event at least. Maybe not so much on Sunday. One big thing I want to point out, one of my first big things, Terry Labonte's team goes out first in the competition. Or excuse me, not first, but they're one of the very early teams. I think they're like the 3rd or 4th team out to do their pit stop. And they lay down a solid stop, but then they're on top of the leaderboard for the majority of the event.
Yeah, because you only get one stop. One stop. There's no bracket. There's no round robin. It's one stop.
Nope. But you know what? The key to their stop is no penalties. They did not have any penalties in their stop, and that's
they've got milk, so they're good to go. They've got calcium for their bones, so they're a very energized pit crew.
Don't forget about that cereal too. They got so much Kellogg's and Pop-Tarts too. I think Pop-Tarts are on their car. I'm not sure, but they have a big Quaker State logo on the deck lid, which is another point too. We have to point out a lot of these cars are show cars, Mark. They're not the real race cars. They're not like Sunday's pieces.
Oh yeah, well I'm not gonna bring my my A car for the weekend to try and win the race to a pit crew competition. So
yeah, break an axle, destroy the transmission, put more time on the motor. Yeah, no way.
Not happening.
Save my piece for Sunday.
Another great moment in this competition is, we'll start by preface by saying this. A lot of crew members or crew chiefs started as pit crew members. Like Chad Knaus used to, I think he was a tire carrier on Jeff Gordon's Rainbow Warriors crew.
Yeah,
and a changer. He was a tire guy.
He was a changer. Knaus was a changer. I think Letarte might have been a carrier too.
Yeah, so they started as crew guys, right? When you're trying to work your way up. And on changing the front tires on Scott Wimmer's number 22, Scott Wimmer had just replaced Ward Burton in the 22 after Ward was released. And Drew Blickenserver is changing the front tires. You'll know Drew Blickenserver. He was a crew chief for many years. I believe he's still a crew chief. I don't know whose crew chief he is now. But
I think he might. Last time I checked, he was with RPM, but I don't know where he is at now. I think he's still.
Jamie, can you look that up for me?
Yeah, Jamie, can you get that for us? We gotta find another name than Jamie because Jamie's too close to my name, man.
He is Michael McDowell's crew chief at
There we
Front
go.
Motorsports, but he absolutely just blows it on their pit stop. Unfortunately, I think he's just trying to rush and go too quickly, and he drops some lug nuts and can't get them on there. So he like then he just takes his time to do them up because they know the clock's already past 20 seconds, so there's no way they're gonna win. So you can see like the dejection on his, just he's wearing a helmet, but you can just see his body language with how upset he is. But you know what, Drew, you're gonna go on to have a career as a crew chief, and you're gonna do all right. So it's okay, bud.
I think he wins a Daytona 500 at least once in his career, right?
I believe so. You know what? I can tell you that.
We can look that up.
A crew chief for Kenseth nationwide. No, I don't think he ever won a 500.
I think he came close.
No, he did. 2009 Daytona 500.
Mm.
So there you go. He was Kenseth's crew chief in 2009.
What a fun fact. And that's what we're here to do, is bring you some fun facts. Man, my favorite driver from 2003, probably one of my favorite drivers in the Tide Ride ever, Ricky Craven. His PPC team, or excuse me, his PPI team just kills it with their pit stop. 16.7 could be a world record if they didn't have one loose lug nut. Man, took them right out of it. They actually ended up finishing pretty high because they had one of the fastest pit stop times before a penalty. But still, man, if it wasn't for that lug nut, we could have been looking at Ricky Craven's crew as being the winners of this event. But
with that Pontiac.
Whew, Grand Prix, man, that 1 year that they ran that in Cup, and I know they ran it in 2004, 2005, vicariously in the Busch Series, mainly in ARCA. But man, that car was just pimping. And I'm actually looking at it as it sits in front of me on my desk. I have a 124 scale Ricky Craven Pontiac Grand Prix Tide Ride. I think it's a Team Caliper, man. That's probably one of my favorite diecasts. But it's so disappointing because like Ricky gets his penalty, like you're watching it, and it's just right when he comes over to the right side of the car to start torquing him. And it's the second lug on the right rear. It's just like painful turn. Like, geez.
And during the contest or competition, we get to see a bunch of features done with Benny Parsons, where he goes and meets some crew members and sees what their full-time jobs are. Because this is back when a lot or most of the pit crew guys had full-time jobs. This was not their full-time career. They would fly out and pit the cars on a race weekend, and they would practice a couple times a week at the shop. But this is before pit crew members, before it was their full-time job. So nowadays, I'd say probably 90% of the top guys on top crews in the sport, Hendrick, Gibbs, it's their full-time job. They train 40 hours a week to pit cars. They work out. They're incredibly in sync. So I'd say a lot of them, some of the guys might have full-time jobs, might have part-time jobs, but I'd say most of them, it's like their full-time career. And I posted a fact the other day on my Twitter account that they make, according to Mr. Todd Bodine, they make some bank, those Cup Series crew guys. Like, 6 figures a year just to pit cars. So.
Yeah, I mean, you get bonuses for, I guess, having success. You get bonuses for when the team wins races because, I mean, you're a pivotal part in it. And, it's always good to get paid a lot for a very dangerous job. Mark, you mentioned one of the pieces. It talks about a crew member on Dale Jarrett's crew who was one of the original guys that got hit by a car. I believe it was Ward Burton's in 2001 when they weren't wearing helmets at Homestead, that implemented the helmet rule. And then in 2003, he gets hit again at Indianapolis. So it's just a very dangerous profession. So if you're going to get paid 6 figures to jump in front of race cars, that's a pretty good trade, I'd say.
Yeah, that guy should probably just find a different career. So you can hit multiple times.
Oh, yeah, you're just a target.
I don't think it's for you.
Another interesting one from the pieces was the cop. The crew member who was also a police officer. It was just funny to me because like Benny's drilling him while he's in uniform, and if anybody knows a cop, they do not have the same rights to say anything they want when they're in uniform as they are in civilian clothing, because they're a civilian at that point. They're not a cop or a police officer. So he's like asking him, like, if racing comes before law enforcement. And you just hear him having to be like, racing's up there, but law enforcement, it's kind of has to come first. Like, he's just trying to backpedal out of it so hard. But we know what you're doing, testing the waters there.
Another cool thing about this competition is the camera angles.
Oh god, yeah.
Like they have a rolling car on the track, like shooting car to car as they drive in to, put the car in the box. So that's pretty cool. What would have been really cool was like, how about some cameras on the crew members? You got in-car cameras. Why can't we get a helmet cam? Never got one.
That technology was there, but it's kind of a shame that they did not incorporate it. And it maybe spoke to the what they did put into this event. I guess the car-to-car shots were kind of groundbreaking back then, and it was really interesting because when I posted a pit stop from this event on my Twitter and Instagram, and I think the biggest thing that people kept commenting on were the camera angles, because not only that car-to-car shot, but the head-on shot as it comes down pit road and the camera angle's allowed to be over the wall. I love that shot. That's such a cool, dynamic shot that you never really get to see in NASCAR. Sometimes you get to see it in sports car racing because there is usually a camera person that does go over the wall with a reporter. But
For
normally,
some reason.
Yeah, that gets obnoxiously too close to the car. That's where my point was going there. That camera is cool. It's a nice stationary shot. It's probably about 4 or 5 pit stalls back. Good amount of length on the lens zoom. It zooms in really well to showcase what the tire changers are doing, but it's not up all in their business. Not getting in the way of the pit stop. Not in a very dangerous position. It's just a really cool angle because you get to see a different angle of the pit crews working, and I really appreciate that. So, though it could have been pushed a little further, I got to say there was some pretty solid camera angles as well.
And I think the thing people are really wondering, James, is who has the fastest pit stop in this competition?
Well, I mean, we did talk about world records. So would this be a world record year? And I mean, if your name is Awesome Bill from Dawsonville and you have a Ray Evernham crew, yeah, it's your year. So, Bill Elliott's team performs a flawless 16.7 second pit stop and accrues no penalties. And this is really, to me, it's great to see this because back in 2003 and especially in 2002, I always remember they had the McDonald's Pit Crew Weekly Championship powered by Powerade. I don't know why I know the title sponsor so well, but it rolls off the tongue. I don't know why. But Bill Elliott and Michael Waltrip were probably the two best teams in 2003 during that Weekly Pit Crew Championship. And it measured the participating teams that like had the McDonald's Powerade decal on their car. It would basically the competition would see which team spent the least amount of time on pit road during each event, whether it was pit stops or just making strategy calls to say taking 2 tires, no tires. But Bill Elliott, man, he really backed up that championship because he won the Unocal 76 Pit Crew Championship. And it wasn't just Bill Elliott. I mean, Bill played a very small part, but it was his crew. His crew did a great job of executing, and not only executing, but not making any mistakes.
Yeah, and Bill Elliott's crew not only had the fastest time, Jeremy Mayfield's crew also had a top 5 time. So Ray Evernham's guys, getting her done. Those Dodge boys, getting her done. Whoever the pit crew coach is definitely needs a raise. So,
oh, for sure. That's another big money thing I think people need to look at too. Is just like this is getting to a point where things are starting to get specialized, and having a great pit crew coach is good. I mean, I don't know where Ray Evernham picked them up, but obviously he was a pioneer of pit stops during his time as crew chief for the Rainbow Warriors. So he definitely brought in insights from Hendrick Motorsports over to his new efforts and probably tried to strengthen the pit crew and enhance it more, with his knowledge.
Yeah, and I feel like with him starting a new organization, that probably would have been a big thing. You always have those newer teams starting, had lots of factory money, kind of like what Red Bull did, right? Came in with a different philosophy, a lot of money, and did things their own way. And that's part of the way Ray did it as well. But what a send-off for Awesome Bill. You know, it's his final season of full-time racing, and he's got the best and fastest pit crew in the garage.
Yeah, and technically he wins the last event of the 2003 season if you're watching it on NBC, because it's the last event, and the number 9 is number 1 on the pylon. Actually, we'll go through the top 10 mark here. I got it pulled up for us. Don't worry, you don't have to look it up because we already did. Bill Elliott, obviously number 1. He had a 16.7 second pit stop. Terry Labonte, second. Man, he almost won this thing going out so early. He had a 17.3 second pit stop. Matt Kenseth's crew, the defending champs, come home third, still on the podium, 17.4 second. Jeremy Mayfield, as mentioned, he came home fourth with the 17.6 second pit stop. Harvick, the last driver out, his crew gets him done in 18.5 seconds. Rusty Wallace had an 18.7. Ricky Craven, with that penalty, still finishes 7th, 19.7 second pit stop in his own category in the 19-second bracket. Then afterwards, you have a lot of penalties. So Greg Biffle, 20.2. Jimmy Johnson, 20.6. And then Tony Stewart, 21.1 second pit stop. Rounds out your top 10.
Pretty solid top 10.
It's
I like that they forced everyone to compete too, and not because how did the pit crew challenges work after that? I think it was like, didn't guys get invited to it?
I think it was you know what? The Tyson one, I'm not sure. And this is another one that Mark and I didn't mention. It ran for a few seasons, from what I remember, but it was a pit crew challenge where they would invite both Xfinity teams and Cup teams to see which pit crew was the best out of the entirety of stock car racing. And they would basically have head-to-head challenges where it was bracket-based, but you faced a pit crew, and you just went and you did a pit stop, and that was it. It wasn't as technical as the pit crew challenge was for the All-Star weekends. I'm not sure if that was an invite only or not, though. I do think the All-Star weekend one was, I don't know if it was based off of points or just based off of the fact that your crew was in the All-Star race.
That might have been it, because then they started for qualifying for the All-Star race involving a pit stop in the qualifying process as well, which I thought was just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I think that was in the mid-90s when they started doing that. That's honestly the coolest thing ever, because if I'm going to watch a qualifying session, I want to watch the qualifying from that weekend and that event, because that's just cool, especially with the whole no pit road speed limits, and you got people flying down pit road from turn 4 trying to woe it back down in their boxes. I mean, talk about pit crews being like objects in a target match. Jesus Christ, right there. That's insane. But it's kind of cool because it's a whole team effort for that qualifying run. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it's a team sport. People forget that. Your crew is incredibly important for your ability to succeed in NASCAR. So if you don't have good stops, you're not getting up the front, and you see that with the smaller teams. They don't have sufficient pit crews, so they have to go slower. They lose time, and that's just the way that it is. So the team usually, and I think if you look at the top 10 that was there, a lot of those teams are the teams that are top 10 in points. Mm-hmm. Because there's a correlation between having the fastest crew and having a good race team.
And with that, I mean, we got to look at rating this, not race, it's more of a program. Mark, scale 1 to 10, where do you rate the Unocal Pit Crew Championship?
Well, there are many criteria to examine. First off, camera angles are great. Second, it's got all-star booth, all-star pit road. Third, well, if it had Dick Berger in it, would be like all-star pit road.
Yeah,
but, we're on NBC here, or Dr. Jerry Punch. He's actually Dr. Jerry Lee Punch on Twitter, so
get it right.
Jerry Lee Punch. It's at Rockingham, which is dope. I don't know. It's awesome. I kind of want to give it a 10. Because it's a quality hour and 5 minutes of entertainment.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 9. I'm going to give it a 9 because it is just a simple pit stop. It doesn't have the pushing of the car as well. But it is very entertaining. I don't think it's boring at all. It's very entertaining. It's nerve-wracking. The only thing I don't like about it is how long it takes to check all the lug nuts,
Yeah.
like by hand, to make sure they're all tightened. Like that's kind of, and they like show it on screen the whole time. Like you can just like show that off screen, you know. So it loses some points there. But I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's cool. It's a lot of fun, and I recommend going checking it out. It's on YouTube.
Oh yeah. It's uploaded by Dave W. There are 2 versions of it, but the Dave W one is a solid an hour and 5 worth of content, and it feels like it's like commercial free content too. So it's even better. Just like it flows really well. You don't really get that chop of a commercial break. It's just quality. Gotta give it a 9 out of 10 because first off, number 9 wins. 9. I don't know. Just feels right. The length of it's good. It's a good hour and 5 minutes. It's quality because you're not getting, too much of the same thing between each pit stop. Every team kind of gives their own little spin to the pit stop. There's always that drama of the lug nuts. It's really kind of dramatic if you're watching, like, for example, Ricky Craven's run and you just get there and the official just got done with the front tire. It's like, geez, he still has 3 more tires to tighten just to make sure that the wheel is all snug. Like, Jesus, it's going to take forever. And it kind of does, and it adds a little more drama to it, a little more intensity, because then you really get invested to see if some team will get a penalty or will not. But something that really just kind of kills it for me is like when the team did not have a fast time, and it wasn't going to be like the first team. It's just like, okay, why are we still hanging on to this, to the story? Don't we move on to the next thing? But it's just the process of, you got to give each car its time in the sun when it's, their time to do their pit stop, complete their pit stop and check all the penalties. So, but the camera angles, man, they are inspiring. Though I wish if they do bring this back now, it would be really interesting to see the car-to-car shots with Gimbal Man, because it would be so much more smoother than they were with the cameraman they had on the back of the truck. But props to the cameraman on the back of the truck, though.
Gimbal guy, he's busy filming burnouts and getting in everyone's way. So
why wasn't he at the burnout competition? That would have been, man. You want to talk about a death wish? Jeez, he probably definitely got hit that weekend.
Yeah. So underlighting needs to be on the Gen 7 car. Clearly.
What is this? Fast and the Furious?
Hey, you know what?
2000.
How much money has that franchise grossed? Okay, I think we should take some things from it.
I mean, maybe what NASCAR should do is we should look at some of the tracks from the Fast and Furious original soundtrack, and you can use that as your theme music now. I mean, IMSA should use that in Victory Lane. Can you imagine Ja Rule in IMSA Victory Lane? That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, with Tony yelling over top of it, Marcel Fassler!
No.
Yeah.
Lame beats. That'd be funny. Sunday.
We love you, Tony.
We love you.
Keep hyping everybody up.
You bring the energy, dude, because no one else has it. So on that note, man, Mark, we got to think of some other off the cusp stuff. I think the biggest thing that comes to my mind is IROC. But I mean, there's a lot of other things that we could touch on during the off season. I mean,
well, the largest sports car race in North America is coming up next month. Other than the Thunderhill 25, but
it's one more hour, bro. You gotta compete one more hour.
They had a huge missed opportunity there. They should have done the Thunderhill 24 hours in 1 minute. That's what they should have done, just to have the longest race. That would have been great.
Should have been the 24 hours. It should have been the 1 day and 1 hour. The 1-1. That's the Thunderhill 1-1.
So, congrats on having the longest race, Thunderhill people. But the Rolex 24 is coming up next month, so I think we have to do something kind of around that. Maybe not like review a race, because I don't know about you. I don't think I have 24 hours to watch, and I don't think anyone would want to listen to us review a 24-hour race. Like, maybe we could just talk about some of the interesting guys that have raced in the Rolex that maybe people don't know about, and maybe some cool stories from the Rolex.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Do you know people that run the Rolex or have run the Rolex? So that would be some interesting content. We know some people that were in NASCAR too that have run the Rolex. So I don't know. Could be something interesting. I think we should definitely do that. And of course, this news and talk about Pinty series, man. You hear about that? They're going on the dirt. So why don't we gotta
They
look
are
at
on the dirt, not
gotta look
far
at
from
some
where I
races
live, about
across
an
the
hour away in Oshwegan.
Oshwegan. Ooh. Yeah, we gotta look at some of those, maybe some ARCA dirt races as well. I mean, there's a plethora of things we're gonna definitely look up. And of course, we do know one of the biggest open wheel races in the country is going to happen in about a month or so. Less than a month, a few weeks actually. The Chili Bowl. That's about to happen. That's gonna be fun. You can always
Yeah,
look at a Chili Bowl that the mini NASCAR driver has come and competed in the Chili Bowl and has won the Chili Bowl. So there's a bit there too. We got some good relevant things to kind of tie the podcasts back to an episode we review in real time. You know what I mean?
yeah, we'll do some cool stuff. We'll talk about some things. Well, it's up to you to decide whether it's cool or not. We will do stuff.
We know it's cool.
Yeah, there will be things that will happen, and we will do those things. And yeah, so I guess that's the end of the episode. I guess we've covered it. So my
Knocked out.
name's Mark. Knocked out of the park. Oh, gone. Aluminum bat, 600 feet, gone. My name is Mark, and you can follow me on Twitter at @FactsNASCAR. I post fun NASCAR facts, and it's going pretty well. I'm doing pretty well. I got 3117 on the follower count, so I'm having a lot of fun talking to people. It's not about the follower count; it's about the engagement, having a good time, and it's fun to talk with people. It's fun to debate things with people and just talk about NASCAR, a sport we all love. Reminder people, we're all on the same side. We're all NASCAR fans, okay? Love each other, okay? There's very few of us around. As much as we're the second most popular sport in North America, definitely it feels like you have a connection with someone when you find out they like NASCAR. Because I don't know how many people you go through in your day-to-day life who are NASCAR fans.
Yeah, it's a very very small number. I gotta agree with you there, Mark.
So love each other, folks.
Yeah.
And James, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at I Want to Believe NASCAR. Just search it up on your Twitter, on your Instagram, and sometimes I'll post something on Facebook. If you want to see Bill Elliott's championship winning run, world record setting run, it is on Twitter, Instagram. Just search I Want to Believe NASCAR. I posted it up a few days ago. That was a really fun one. It was really fun to converse with fans about that because especially on Twitter, you get to have people tag those people who were on the pit crew back then working on these cars, and those people somehow find your posts and they can engage with you. So it's really nice to meet those people. And what we all got to remember is just we all love this sport called NASCAR. It doesn't matter anything else that comes in between that doesn't make you who you are. What really makes that connection really strong with somebody else is the fact that you both love NASCAR. It's a really cool sport, especially when talking about vintage stuff like this. Or I wouldn't consider this vintage, I guess, nowadays. It's pretty relevant. It's just older things that have kind of come and gone and seen the course of the sport. So it's really cool to meet those people and get perspectives.
And with that, this has been the 16th episode of Flashback to the Track. We will see you in episode 17.
Sweet 16.